Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SB Reacts where today we got ourselves a track from an X named 2 of 13 titled Gun Cube. And if we switch over to here, I should note, first of all, we have the art up on the screen here of the cute kitty cat. I should also note that I reviewed music from 2 of 13 before. I previously checked out their track titled Fracture, the album mix. I think they've got an album coming out later in the year if I'm not mistaken. But today we have Gun Cube, so we're going to listen through it from start till finish. And we're going to hear what we think. We're going to be also giving this track an overall score at the end based on various musical criteria, but for now, let's go. Gun Cube, what do we have? Immediate into distortion, rather, very quickly. I mean, it's such a kind of a lo-fi, visceral way of producing things. Sick pinch marks. The production's like really fascinating. There's just such a rattle to the snare. You could hear them talking in the background. That was kind of cool, like low-key. But yeah, we're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an X named Tour of 13 titled Guncube. In this section we're going to provide an overall song analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals, all the way through to studio production as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. I should also note that I've given this song an overall score of 8 out of 10, which is quite a high score. There's just a lot that I appreciate about this track in isolation. There's some really intriguing sort of tones and textures that I especially appreciate. But before we go any further, what do we think this track is about? I'm gonna level with you guys. I'm not sure about what the song is about. I'd listened through the lyrics multiple times, and in that sort of sung almost kind of reminds me like of Deftones. There's like a sung part later in the second half of the track, and you can hear I would and kill. Is it something or other or along those lines? But I didn't get the kind of black metalish kind of screams and growls that we had earlier on the piece. And the way that they were presented in the track kind of makes me think that that was almost a deliberate decision on their part, that the vocals were more of an aesthetic thing as opposed to having it more of a deliberate lead device. There is a lot of interesting sort of instrumental elements to amalgamate and niche with the vocals, so I by no means really necessarily even needed to have a specific sort of kind of amount of hand-holding in terms to sort of figure out what's going on here. It's just me being sort of candid about my experience, trying to understand what it's about. So I had to listen through that line again just to make sure I wasn't tripping. It goes, look at what and is it like looking at the gun cube? I'm just not sure. But I think the ambiguity there, the kind of curiosity I have about it is a good thing. I think that the curiosity I have about it is a good thing, And again, I think you go searching within a track to learn more from the other elements, so it therefore makes you more engaged in the process. With the production offering this kind of sort of like post-wave-ish kind of lo-fi aesthetic to the piece here with a whole heap of reverbs and filters and sort of post-processing, distorted and bit crushing and stuff like that, making the vocals a bit less clear in the mix clearly on purpose. You have the understanding that they can do what they do well. Like you can hear the vocals themselves, and the textures and tones and timbres are appreciable. They match well with a lot of what's going around with the surrounding elements. You never feel like they're too alien. And so when I listen to this track, I think, okay, there is a sense of frustration or like outburst with those vocal fresh parts at the start. And then at the look at what I've done part that's a bit later on there, it seems like it's going for a different sort of angle on what we were originally trying to communicate. So I appreciate that because the track also structurally is very diverse in terms of all the various angles that we explore, that is included there. Again, like I said this at the end of the listening section, but it was also kind of cool to just hear them talking about the breakdown they were going to do and stuff like that. You immediately get the understanding that they have probably recorded those instruments and that they're featuring that sort of room mic audio there to sort of, in a way that I think adds authenticity to the process. I think structurally at 4 minutes or 2 though, outside of a competent vocal performance, outside of not being able to necessarily understand everything that's being communicated, you have a track that's just outside a 2-minute sweet spot, but it doesn't feel like there's any filler in it by any means. It's chock-a-block full of various guitar, bass, drum, as well as other instruments that kind of pepper the piece and make it very sort of interesting. Acoustic guitar, steel strings strummed there with this interesting resonance there before we go into these new metalish kind of distorted rhythm parts there with power chords and droning notes. And they kind of have this crispiness there that's kind of abrasive on face value and communicates maybe the mood of what we're trying to sort of say on the microphone. I kind of dig that there are these little kind of tippy-tappy parts, which I don't know if they're a synth or they're sort of like guitar leads in the background, they're tap guitar leads, but either way, just they're so colorful and amongst the tension of those guitar parts, it's so lush so early on. And there's this kind of like visceral vibrato to other parts as well, which makes it sound gruesome. There are also some really neat pinch harmonics as well for squealies on the different sides of the stereo field. It was great to hear the guitars double tracked. The drums, I should note, they were very, very compressed. There was a heavy amount of bass compression on those. They sounded like they were being sort of like pushed through a tube. And I think if we were going for a harsher tone, more pushed tone to the drums, something a bit heavier or more sort of fiery sounding, we absolutely found it. There's not a typical you want the kick to kind of click or push through kind of approach to this. There's a heavy sizzle on those cymbals, and you clearly hear the hi-hats and the crashes and the snares there, you know, especially with some of those snare rolls that we have later on there. It's a very interesting way of recording those drums. It's very sort of like almost experimental. There's almost this kind of new metalish kind of melodic metal approach to the minute mark, which sounds groovy and you get used to that, but we don't stay on things for too long. Around the 1 minute 15 mark, literally 10 seconds later, we have these kind of ambient synths and keys that go inwards and outwards, and they're incredibly pretty with the way that they are stacked and harmonized. There's a bit of bit crushing and sampling as well to make it sound kind of, there's some sort of synth pads as well, and some like kind of elements or textures that make it sound sort of glitchy or bit crushed or kind of simulated, and it's just neat to have such a vibe shift there in a way that doesn't seem too blunt. I think part of what helps to tie things together is the fact that the drums continue throughout the piece. Well, they're not there literally all the time, but you have that kind of thing to connect back to the prior section there. You've got a slightly different arrangement of side characters with the main one playing the meat and pushing it forward. And we're very articulate with those hi-hats. I like the little flurries and flams and sort of fills and sort of like rushes and kind of like techniques on the hi-hat and how it decorates it. And the fact that we don't just rely on the same groove and we adjust our meter and pace and cadence as we go. As we bring back those kind of filthy sounding guitars around the 2 minute 20 mark there, you feel like you're kind of home at that stage. You've had a moment to appreciate the harmonies involved within that quite more low-key midsection. And it's almost like the vocalists remembers that they can communicate a different way, so they do so on that part. There's also some interesting moments of symmetry, not just from a production perspective, but also from a compositional one, such as around 2 minute 45 mark, where you just have the guitar coming in, you have the bass in the center, and it's on the left and center, and it's just very kind of surreal, because it's like, why are we having it kind of balanced like that? But you know that you don't make those decisions imposed by accident, and by having less of things everywhere, it's more captivating in the sense that you're like, what's going to happen next? That comes after a complete stop, after the vocals come out. And there's moments where the vocals are just breathing as well and doing more than just singing or screaming. There's a lot of variety there. There's even like a little guitar solo, peppy, with kind of almost some sort of jazzy kind of influences there, but also bluesy with the phrasing of the kind of crispiness of it. But we have this kind of resolutely kind of dusty sounding guitar tone there that just has a bit of kind of sass to it, and it kind of it niches neatly with the lead in a way that is unusual, because often you want to adjust the feel of the rhythm to the lead to make them match. I think, to be honest, a lot of the kind of rattle and rumble does come again from the snare tones there, where they've just got a really kind of unfiltered, sort of unregulated kind of approach to those there. Like we were not trying to sugarcoat the snare sound. We wanted that to sound raucous. But as you kind of fade out the track with some of the spoken parts and the bass, etc., you feel like you've had an adventure. And I'm not really sure how to apply GunCube as... The only thing I'd say about it thematically, for example, is that it's trying to be abrasive because the subject matter is meant to be that way. So I assume there is a connection to that. When we say look at what is it maybe saying something we've done? So we're looking at all the angles of that thing. Maybe we're screaming out to someone, and when we finally got their attention, we could tell them what we wanted. Either way, it's a track where, it's minor leaning clearly, but there's like nuance to it because a lot of the different sort of like notes and bass lines and chord progressions and stuff like that. There are some parts where it's just resolutely minor triad or even like just diatonic. There are some moments where it is simply just power chords or triads. Other points it's extensions there, and it's a bit more gentle sounding. I just feel like this is more of an emotional roller coaster, and I appreciate that. To be fair, Fracture, the album mix, was very much the same, and I just think if anything it's a compliment to the creativity of the musicians involved that they're able to sort of just like this in a way where it almost seems like a feature film, with the lack of wanting to stick to one sort of specific idea. We're just flitting between them in a way where if it was less reliable, it would seem a bit manic, but otherwise, in this situation, it seems deliberate, so it's very good. Performance is tight. I think I'm I think it's just the studio recording, mixing, and mastering now that I want to discuss. And part of why I like that is simply because of how unfiltered it is. Ironically, there are reverb delay tails and deliberate choices with the panning and a lot of sort of post-production decisions that you couldn't have had the sound without. I appreciate how we've got the raw tone of like those snares and stuff like that. I like how boxed in the drum kit is because it sounds claustrophobic, like they're stuck in the cube. I think the vocals, the way they're presented, not being too clear, shows that we're not just comfortable with having the vocals like in the concept of them being the main point. We want them to be a part of the track as well, the overall experience. We know how to bring the vocals forward a little bit and when to sort of keep them back. We know how to bit crush and distort and add pads and, you know, put the guitars, bass and drums, you know, evenly spread around the stereo field, as well as when to keep it asymmetrical. There's no weird resonances in the frequency spectrum. I mean, there might be a few harsher sort of upper end resonances, but nothing that's too wild or overwhelming or overpowering, you know. Ultimately, nice and loud bass compression, limiting is handled, and it's just a very different sounding mix. But I appreciate when people take risks with this kind of studio stuff and it pays off. And it's music that I will recognize and pay more attention to because they're not just trying to sort of like make safe decisions. They're taking some risks, and most of them pay off. And ultimately, I think they pay off. So no applicable constructive critique. From a general listener's perspective, I feel like they should just keep going with this kind of music because it's very sort of like fun to listen to. It makes you think, and it's not spoon feeding you, and it's played quite well. And I love it when I can hear people playing their instruments, and I love the idea of people getting to meta or making an album. It's just refreshing, and I know that should seem like a given, but with the amount of music I've reviewed, where like you can just tell that it's trying to be made as efficiently as possible. I appreciate when I can hear people putting love into their craft. So wish everyone involved all the best of luck in future with their music, but thank you for watching my review of this track from an X named Tour 13 titled Gun Cube, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.